All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking something pretty startling, the unseen costs of Europe's changing summers. We usually think of summer as this great time to relax, maybe take a holiday, but right now, across Europe, the season is transforming into something that carries a very real, very heavy toll.
So, to kick things off, I've got a question for you, and I want you to think really critically about this for a second. What claims more lives across Europe today? Is it the dramatic, highly visible tragedy of road traffic accidents? Or is it the silent, invisible blanket of extreme heat waves?
Well, the answer absolutely shatters our usual preconceptions. In 2023 alone, that invisible threat of heat claimed an estimated 44,645 lives across the EU. Guys, that's more than double the roughly 20,400 lives lost to traffic fatalities. Think about that. We spend billions, literally billions, engineering safer roads, but this silent killer is just slipping right past our defenses.
To understand why this is escalating so fast, and honestly, why our memories of those nice, cool summer evenings are kind of fading away, we have to look at the physical mechanics happening right above our heads and beneath our feet. It's actually a combination of our skies, our soil, and our cities all working together to basically crank up the thermostat. Section 1. Why Europe is baking. The meteorology behind the extremes. Okay, let's dive into the actual science driving these crazy temperatures, because no, the sun isn't just shining a bit brighter. Our entire atmospheric system is shifting. It starts way up high with the jet stream, this fast-moving river of air. Normally, it zips across the sky, bringing us those nice, cool Atlantic storms. But because the Arctic is warming up so much faster than the rest of the world, this jet stream is slowing down. It actually splits into two branches, what we call a double jet state. So instead of moving fast, it gets stuck. It loops, acting like a giant wall that blocks the cooling weather and traps all that intense heat right over Western Europe. And when these systems get stuck like that, they form what scientists call a heat dome. It's exactly what it sounds like. Imagine putting a tight lid on a boiling pot of water. The high pressure acts just like that lid, pushing the hot air down and trapping it there. The heat just builds and builds day after day. That's the exact mechanism that recently baked Sicily to a staggering 49 degrees Celsius. I mean, that is the hottest temperature ever recorded in Europe. Unbelievable. So the crucial takeaway here is that we really need to stop thinking of heat waves as just a ground-level problem. They're actually fully three-dimensional phenomena. Recent studies show us that these heat waves build thick, warm, residual layers way up high in the troposphere. The heat is literally stacked into the sky. And because of this massive column of hot air, the heat doesn't just escape when the sun goes down. It robs us of those cool nights our bodies desperately need to just recover. Now, let's look at the ground level because the soil plays a massive role in this too. Under normal conditions, moisture in the ground evaporates and cools the air. Simple enough, right? But when a drought hits and the soil dries out, that natural air conditioning completely breaks down. The sun's energy goes straight into heating the ground, which then heats the air even more, which dries out the soil even further. It is this terrifying, vicious feedback loop that just amplifies the heat wave every single day. And then you throw our cities into the mix. When you combine these stuck atmospheric conditions and bone-dry soils with massive expanses of city concrete, the results are deeply concerning. Materials like asphalt and concrete, they just absorb the sun's energy all day long and slowly bleed it out at night. We call this the urban heat island effect. It effectively turns places like Paris and Madrid into giant heat batteries, keeping them up to 5 degrees Celsius warmer than the surrounding countryside. 5 degrees?
Section 2. The toll on human life. An unequal burden.
All right, so now that we get the physical drivers from the jet stream all the way down to the pavement, we have to look at the very real, very human consequences of all this trapped heat. And the sheer scale of it is jarring. Just look at Greece. Heat caused over 6.5 times the number of traffic deaths there. In Spain and Italy, heat fatalities outpaced traffic deaths by more than 4 to 1. This is not some isolated fluke. It's a massive, continent-wide shift. But the tragic reality here is that this burden isn't shared equally. Not at all. The heat falls heaviest on folks with the least ability to adapt. The statistics show a massive spike in risk for the elderly, especially women over 80, and people with pre-existing chronic conditions. But it's also a deeply socioeconomic issue. We're talking about economically disadvantaged individuals, outdoor workers, often migrants, who simply can't escape the sun, and even pregnant women and newborns facing a wildly disproportionate level of danger. And the projections? They are a major wake-up call. If we don't drastically adapt our societies, upgrade our healthcare, and cool down our cities, the data projects we could be looking at over 120,000 summer heat deaths annually in Europe by the year 2050. Let that sink in. That is a staggering loss of life that is, in so many ways, entirely preventable. Section 3. The cost to our wallets. How heat and drought drain the economy. Beyond the devastating loss of human life, this compound threat is also quietly draining Europe's economic strength and hitting the livelihoods of millions. See, when extreme heat waves and severe droughts strike at the exact same time, they create this compounding economic shock. As it stands right now, these combined events are reducing average household incomes across Europe by nearly 3%. It happens through things like reduced labor productivity, failing crops, and disrupted infrastructure. It all adds up. But here's the real kicker, and what you really need to understand: the stark inequality of this economic hit. The poorest 20% of the population, they suffer an income drop of 4%, which is actually more than double the hit taken by the rest of society. When you're already living on the margins, a 4% drop doesn't just mean skipping a vacation or tightening your belt. It drives millions directly into poverty. And when we zoom in on the specific local impacts, the numbers get even scarier. Drought-stricken regions are seeing massive economic drains. Take Madrid, for example. Household incomes there are plummeting by a staggering 10% during these extreme periods. 10%. And places like central Hungary and central Spain, they really aren't far behind. So if we just stay on our current global policy trajectory, which currently puts us on a path toward 2.7 degrees of warming, the long-term financial forecast is honestly pretty bleak. By the end of the century, the average European household could lose more than a quarter of its income. We're talking 27% gone, just due to these climate extremes. Section 4. Preparing for the future. Systemic adaptation and mitigation. So that brings us to the million-dollar question. The science is clear on the physics, the health impacts, and the economic drain. So how do we adapt our cities, our economies, and our daily lives to survive this new reality? Well, public health experts are pointing to a model we already know works. Over the years, we've successfully engineered our way to safer roads with coordinated regulation and a Vision Zero strategy for traffic deaths. Now, experts are urgently calling for that exact same Vision Zero mindset to protect us from extreme heat. We need that same level of funding, coordination, and public awareness. Because, let's face it, the game has changed entirely. Climatologists use this great analogy of loaded dice. In the past, rolling a severe heat wave was just a rare stroke of bad luck, a fluke. But climate change has loaded the dice of our weather systems. Every single degree of warming adds another heat wave side to those dice. Meaning record-breaking heat isn't bad luck anymore. It is a statistical certainty of the modern European summer. So our survival toolkit has to be totally comprehensive. We have to combine immediate local adaptations, like planting more trees to break that urban heat island effect, upgrading our housing, and rolling out robust heat health action plans for the vulnerable. But guys, adaptation alone just isn't going to cut it. We have to couple all of this with the absolute necessity of rapidly cutting the greenhouse gases that are thickening our planet's heat-trapping blanket. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. The science clearly shows temperatures are inevitably rising, and these heat waves are only getting longer and stronger. So knowing this invisible toll on our health and our wallets, what steps are you and your community taking right now to prepare for the heat waves of tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me, and please stay cool out there.